So we're talking about producing. This is an interview about producing, specifically about the career path, the whys, the success, the partnerships, the relationships, etc. Why are you a producer?
Has anyone answered that quickly and intelligently? Let me say this: like when I got in this business, there were a lot of other people in this business that were my friends, and I just assumed we're all doing this together. And a lot of them dropped out to go be lawyers, accountants, one to be a doctor, and it just surprised me because this whole time I'm like, there's nothing else I can do. Like this is just what I'm drawn to, and it's funny because we produced this movie Cam with this really talented producer Isabel Link-Levy. And she left the business, and for a second it was like, why are you doing that? And it was like, oh, she got out, she escaped. So for me personally speaking, like there's no other choice.
What do you love about producing?
Ooh,
to change the flavor a little bit, yeah. But what do you love about it?
That's a great question. I don't know, problem solving, also being able to support art and help support artists. And just being a part of something that's going to last longer, but in a more behind the scenes capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about the advantages of having producing partners in your company. Let's talk about that.
Honestly, I don't know how you do it alone. I think that's the bottom line. And for me, I've never done it alone. I came into producing through Adam, right? So I've never known doing it without somebody else. So just having that support, and just having that person who's in it with you and who understands what you're going through. Because I think we all feel as a producer a lot of times you're alone on an island and that you're doing so much and carrying so much weight that nobody really sees and knows, even the director a lot of times. So it's great to have that person who's sort of in it with you. Even if they're not necessarily doing the same thing at the same time as you, they have your back, at all times.
Can you talk about how you use it strategically as producing partners? Like how you use each other, good cop, bad cop, or you talk to the talent and you talk to the team, the representatives, etc. Can you give any sort of examples about like how you use that strategically?
Yeah, I mean, the company's called Divide and Conquer because in our early days we would constantly yell divide and conquer. We'd constantly split but have to do multiple tasks at the same time. And one of our thoughts is what we try to do really early on is we tried to take on all the responsibilities of a producer as individuals, meaning that it was never going to be something where like Greg's good at this, but I'm good at this. The idea is that we are holistic. We can do everything, so that at a moment's notice, if we need to actually switch, if someone was on this path and someone was doing something else, if all of a sudden like I need to like jump out to go do something else, Greg can go handle the situation I was dealing with, and vice versa. Really early on in our career, we were doing exclusively, not intentionally, but exclusively short form music videos, commercials, short films, and with the aspiration of doing features. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure is we never had to say no. That if there was ever something that we wanted to do because it was going to increase our resume, it was going to make us better producers, it was something that we were really into, or even just like it was going to put money in the bank that we would use to survive, we wanted to be able to say yes. And I was an individual producer before partnering up, and I would have to say no because I would say like, oh, well, I'm shooting this during these dates, and then there's rap during this, and so I can't possibly swap onto this. But by having a partner, and also beyond us, there's all these other line producers, PMs, coordinators, and now like mini producers, like younger people that we're working with. The idea is that no matter what, we can always say yes if there's something we want to do because we'll figure out how to slide people onto different things so that the filmmakers, the auteurs, the EPs, the people that are like that need us will always have someone there taking care of the project.
How do you guys decide what to say yes to?
I mean, there's a lot of ways. Like we sort of have always started with the three pillars: money, art, relationships, and sort of starting from there. And like, does it tick one or more of these boxes? But then something lately too that we're really looking at is what has a pathway to actually get made. Because it's great to find 10 things that you love so dearly, and if you don't know how to actually get any of them made, right, then what are you doing? So it's like we try to limit the ones that we call the rocks up the hill to just the couple of things that we're really, really like, I will push this boulder until the day I die, and then really take a good, strong look at what do we really like, who do we really want to work with, and what pathways exist that we can actually get this financed or get this cast and get this made. So that's like a good place that we always start. Yeah.
It's a natural sort of turn into my next subject, which is Adopt a Highway. Tell me about Adopt a Highway.
Oh, it's a movie that we produced. God, that's a broad, open-ended question.
How you got involved in Adopt a Highway.
So you have to go back a little bit. So we've done a lot of stuff with Blumhouse and with Jason, and they sort of said, hey, we have this really small indie film that's not really in our wheelhouse. Like, are you guys interested in coming on board and sort of taking this over the finish line for us? And Ethan Hawke read it, who's obviously Ethan Hawke, and he really loved it and he wanted to do it.
Making it happen.
Yeah.
So they financed the movie outright.
They financed it, and it was really, and found the financing, we should say. It was partially theirs. And it was really nice of them because we had been working with them on exclusively genre films. And so to sort of entrust us, not just with a drama, but also Ethan and Jason are best friends. Yeah. Like, to entrust us with Ethan as well was a really major deal. And last night we premiered, and we had to pull Jason aside and just say how much we appreciated that he had given us the opportunity beyond just like supporting our other films, but placing this in our laps and letting us run with it.
It was a very surreal experience because the way it all kicked off, Jason was like, great, you guys are going to fly to New York and have lunch with Ethan, and then he's going to sign off on you guys. So we flew to New York, had lunch with Ethan, and Ryan, his wife, who also produced the project with us and was great. And then
he was an awesome producer.
Yeah. And then flew home, and it was like a very odd, just like fly to New York for lunch and then fly back the next morning.
But it went great.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
It doesn't have to be specific to this film, but what's the hardest part of the process?
I hate that this is the answer to that. It's finding money. And it's been that way since day one, and I don't know if that's ever going to change. We're in an incredibly complex industry in the sense that like the supply and the demand are not meeting up. There's so many people who want to make movies and not so many people that actually want to pay and watch films. And trying to navigate that world is a constant struggle.
Yeah, and it's a totally different skill set than making a movie, promoting a movie, selling a movie. It's like there's zero idea that the skill sets overlap between the making and the finishing and the selling and all of that, and the convincing an investor to give you $1, $2, $3 million or whatever. And like to be expected to be great at both of those things is like a weird pairing, because they're just so different.
Rebecca and I were talking about it earlier, and you guys, you're prolific. You're making movies in what I would call a tricky space, because I'm making them there as well. Under a few $1 million. You're working with some first-time filmmakers. When you look at the budget and you go through it and you're figuring it out, you guys have a lot of experience now. What are some of the things you absolutely fight for from the producer mindset that will not be cut no matter what?
It's a really good question. Yeah. I mean, that evolves as well, but at the same time, I'd like to try and find, there's got to be a few things that,
I think there's a lot of little things. It's like production staff, enough PAs, somebody to do production accounting. And something we've learned a lot recently too, which may be the most unsexy answer possible, is budgeting for delivery. Budgeting to make sure that when we sell it a year later and everybody's gone on to 9 other jobs, that we can hire the line producer and the coordinator for a couple of weeks to track down all those missing deal memos and signatures and stuff like that. Like, that's been our latest battle, is just sort of making sure we're going with like solidifying that part of it, not necessarily the production part of it, but the like selling and everything after part of it, and making sure that that fits in the budget.
Yeah. And time, we're constantly trying to figure out how to like get the most time for shoot days, the most time for editorial.
I mean, little things like making sure they have AE, assistant editor support all the way throughout, doing things like making sure the post house does the conform when you're going to go turn over to color. The boring things that, like when you're the producer, if there's nobody hired to do something, you have to do it. And like fundamentally at the end of the day, when we're doing as much as we're doing, if we get bogged down for 2 weeks trying to do nitty gritty of technical post work, it really grinds everything to a halt. And like same with delivery. So for us, a big goal of ours is how do we continue to free ourselves up to think about getting the next couple projects going while still giving the love and care to the projects we have going.
We can get specific as well, but sort of how do you approach, what's your style in terms of a producer-director relationship? Are you kid gloves? Are you, only doing it via text? Are you figuring out when you talk to them? Does only one of you talk to a director? Like how, let's talk about that relationship.
It all depends on the director, first and foremost. They're all different, but I mean, it's the range. It's like sometimes it's firmness. Sometimes it's, hey, you need to back off. You need to stop. And a lot of times it's just moral support and being like, it's okay.
Yeah, we it's interesting. Yeah, usually there is one person who is the point on a project. That's kind of evolved as time's gone on because we've like gotten to work. We're now working with directors second and third times, and they've got relationships with the both of us, so it becomes more of a triangle. But we usually typically just do kind of one-on-one with the other producer supporting that relationship. The way that we feel about filmmaking is we like to get behind their vision. We often never really disagree, and if we do disagree, it's because we feel like they're betraying themselves. We're saying we know that your intention is this, but we think that you're actually not accomplishing it, and here's why. The other thing is we work with a lot of first-time filmmakers, and because we've made a lot of movies, it does become sort of like helping them through the process. It's a little bit of therapy, as all producers say, and it's a little bit of guidance, a little bit of here from our experiences in the past. Here are the pitfalls. Here are the missteps that we've witnessed and been a part of, and here's how to avoid those. Here's how to talk to people. Here's how set is usually run, and we try and give that advice and give that knowledge while at the same time figuring out how to mold the production around that specific person's strengths and weaknesses.
You're protecting themselves from themselves. Yeah, to a certain degree.
Protecting them and also and backing them up. Or like supporting them. Really in the sense of trying to figure out what they're going for and smoothing the relationships between them and everyone else on set to try and achieve that in a way that also at the same time protects the crew.
Yeah. And also finding the crew and the other people around them that will be a good fit for them so as to make the process as easy as possible for everybody.
It blows my mind when people sort of insert a director into like an already established, like into a crew, because so much of that is the relationships that they have between those people. I mean, just look at like a director and a cinematographer. That is, I think, our first sort of pairing that we try and find, because these are people who have to like spend hours, weeks and weeks ahead of the production, sort of like figuring things out. And then that cinematographer becomes sort of the translator to the rest of the departments in a lot of ways. And then same with the AD, that's a whole other relationship. So for us, every new director means a new combination of crew that pairs well with that specific personality.
Yeah. And when they're a first-time director, it's like they don't have those people. Maybe they have one person who they did some shorts with or something. So it's always this interesting puzzle to assemble with like trying to figure out what is going to be a good fit. Because it's not just the director fitting well with everybody. It's also, okay, is that DP going to fit well with that production designer and that AD as well? So it becomes this sort of like cascading domino effect,
When we have a director meeting like people for the first time, and they say they meet like the cinematographer, or not, when they're interviewing the cinematographer, I should say, we have them sit down and start talking about the project and start talking about the logistics, but we really make them hang out way too long, just because after they're kind of done talking about that, you kind of see how their personalities flow, and sometimes people have nothing to talk about and it's just awkward, and other times they just sort of like start talking about movies they love, and you can see like a real bond forming, and so we try and keep our eye out for that, because it's not just work, like there is this like, you need to find these bonds between people. And like other things too, like I something that we learned really early on is that so we've done several reshoots. We've done reshoots to sort of figure out, how to make the third act work, or maybe this certain thing wasn't working. We need more inserts. And something we've realized is that while you're in production, oftentimes you're like, oh my God, our day's ending. We need to get, we need to figure out how to just get this scene done. And I think something that we've picked up on is recognizing when those scenes actually need that time. And sometimes you pull like a 16-hour day to get that. And what we've been very conscious of doing is, well, sometimes you do have to sort of cut the day out or really like squeeze a scene. Sometimes we realize, oh, if we get out of this scene now, we're going to end up having to reshoot it because this is an integral part of this third act. And so we've literally pulled money from our reshoot budget to add 4 more hours to the day just to make sure that we got it, so that we end up not having to reshoot that scene and rebuild the set and bring all the actors back, and et cetera.
And something along that too is something we try to do with all of our directors is beforehand be like, something's going to get cut. When you do the final edit, the script's not going to be the movie. There's always something that goes. So as much as we can get ahead of really trying to drill down into what those things are now, or at least to have an idea, like it really helps protect the things that Adam is talking about and being like, okay, this is super integral. Okay, this one, maybe we can, thin this out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, we've been bringing the editors on earlier in the process, and sometimes they can read a script and communicate with the filmmaker. They're like, if I had this material with me, like in the edit bay, I would actually probably lose this scene or cut out at this point. And having that sort of feedback with the director helps them sometimes, lop things off of the production that are totally extraneous.
At what point specifically do you mean, maybe you bring that editor? Is that 5 weeks before the shoot, or is that a week before the shoot, or is that week 1? To get specific, sort of.
Definitely cutting day 2. Like we like to have the editor working when the shoot starts. But it's always nice to have them hired and ready to go in prep so they can weigh in. Whether it's on shot list or script notes or anything like that. It's like as early as possible.
Yeah, our priorities in terms of hiring really start at like cinematographer and AD, and then after that, it's department heads, it's production designer, costume designer, hair, makeup, but included in that is the editor.
Yeah, one of our favorite first ADs always said, and this always stuck with me: great prep, good shoot; good prep, okay shoot; okay prep, bad shoot. And I think that extends to the creative side as well. So as much as you save time and money on the back end, whether it's in production or in post, by making sure you're doing all of these things early, and maybe you do have to put the editor on for a week during prep, and your budget is like, why would I do that? But that might save you 3 weeks of editorial time on the back end because it's not working, because you need to keep reworking it, because you need to hire that additional editor, et cetera.
What do you wish you would have known about producing before you went down this path? What do you wish someone had told you?
I've sometimes answered that. Okay. We've made a lot of films, and we have only recently recognized something that many people already know, which is just how damn important getting actors on helps the pathways of financing and getting a film made. And I think that if I could personally go back in time, I would have, before every production, met with all the reps of the key actors that we're working with and sit down with them and say, I'm working with your client. I'd love to know more about them. I want to make sure that it's a good experience on set. And then I want to know more about you and more about your client roster, and start establishing those relationships early on. It's one thing to just sort of like cold call and try and meet like an agent for lunch, but to actually have something substantial to talk about because you're about to work with their client is so much more important. And I wish I started building those relationships earlier on that way.
Knowing how hard you guys work and you have things in phases, how do you make sure you're celebrating the successes?
Ooh, it's really hard to, because you get so deep in the process of making at whatever phase that you kind of need to be forced to celebrate. So that's why coming to here, like to a festival, it's a really good way to do that, because it takes you out of your daily grind and puts you in a position of, oh wait, we actually helped do the thing. And you can see the thing on display for people and in the world, because it's so easy to be off on our little island in the office, just like grinding it out day after day after day that you do lose sight of that. So I think making sure to come to the festival and go to the screenings and stuff like that really, really helps.
There's nothing better than being in a quiet room with your cell phone turned off and the thing that you've been working on for years like up on screen and people like having a reaction to it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's why I do this.